Hey, I'm Matthew Alvin Brown. I am 43 years old, and I'm a director, an actor, a songwriter, a teacher. I'm an artist.
Matthew Brown, what's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, man. I'm in the house, kind of like you, and I'm with my family and trying to find ways to be of service to the community. And I thought there was no better way than to sit down and talk with you and share your journey, man. I hope you're ready to do that today.
Let's share a journey.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I always am so impressed. Anytime we get a chance to work together, obviously you're such a gifted artist, but I'm almost more impressed with the way you have shaped your career. You have built the career you wanted to build. You do a little bit of everything, and we'll talk about that. But I mean, talk about a guy who has created his own opportunities. I got to find out how you got there, man. So let's start with your origin.
Okay.
Let's start with being a Putnam City West kid in Oklahoma City. Tell me about it. Tell me about the household you grew up in.
The household I grew up in, it was interesting. You know, it was like a lot of kids, divorced parents from a pretty early age. So up until I was about 13, I lived with my mom, who was very conservative and religious and awesome.
Gotcha.
And then when I was 13, I got to move in with my dad, who was not very conservative.
Okay.
And he was awesome. So I got that, that experience of the divorced kid, of like living with the mom for a little while and living with the dad.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was high school. I think I was probably a pretty small little geek in high school, to tell you the truth. I didn't really fit in a whole lot of places. So obviously I showed up in theater. And I just, that's really, honestly, to tell you the truth, that's all I focused on once I found it, really,
Right.
was just doing shows. Like, and I knew that I always wanted to do them. I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was in high school, other than I knew whatever it was going to be some kind of actor, whether it was on stage or on TV or in movies. Of course, when you're a kid, you think, well, that's the movies. That's what that is.
Sure.
And then, as you grow, you decide, oh no, there's something really way more exciting about theater for me.
Right.
And that's where that all happened, was right there. And I started doing shows at Jewel Box,
Okay.
in high school, and then I got my first lyric show in high school.
Wow.
In the summer, and I just kept going. Went to college right after that,
Right.
to UCO.
How'd you get introduced to, how did you come into contact with theater to begin with? With either of your parents invested in theater?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think what happened, and I was tracing this back the other day with Emily, because we kind of just, we've got a lot of time on our hands.
Sure.
So we've decided to watch a lot of Disney Plus, because, everything's great there. Yeah, it's there. So we were watching a lot. We were going down a Muppet wormhole, which I tend to do.
Right.
And I realized, I was like, oh, I know why I love musical theater and theater. It's because the show that was on HBO all the time was The Muppets Take Manhattan. And that's why when I listened to Merrily We Roll Along for the first time, I was like, well, that guy's voice sounds like the guy from Muppets Take Manhattan. And of course, it was Lonnie Price.
Mm-hmm.
So I made all these connections when I was pretty young about it. And I think that's what happened, because out of the womb, it was the Beatles and the Muppets. And so I think the Muppets somehow introduced me to theater in a way. And the first musical I knew was a musical. My friend I think I was in second grade, he was like, look at this. This is awesome. It's got Steve Martin and a puppet. And it was Little Shop of Horrors.
Right.
And I was like, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's totally it. And so I think it was just me being ready for it. And I caught it, because I certainly wasn't going to get that from my dad or my mom, both awesome people, but had no interest in theater.
Right.
Really at all.
Right. But that's where you got the Beatles from.
I got the Beatles from my dad for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then again, I go back to that and I think about Sgt. Pepper's, was the album that got me. And you listen to that, and for a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, it's a movie.
Right.
Like, it sounds like a story. And so that one, and then I remember going through his records and looking at the Goodbye Yellow Brick Road by Elton John and thinking, well, I don't know what this is, but it was something more than just ZZ Top's record, you know?
Right,
it was like something there. So I think the Muppets and like early concept albums sort of just crept in there, and then I found theater, and I was like, well, that's kind of got all of it, you know?
And so you're infused with this kind of storytelling through art, whether it be, you know, rock albums or concept albums or the Muppets. Cause I mean, even their live show was kind of, you know, variety show that they did on NBC or wherever that was when we were kids.
Yeah.
So it's all that kind of that form of storytelling. Were your parents, although not invested in the work, were they supportive of it, particularly coming from a conservative on one side and a not so conservative on the other?
Unbelievably supportive. Unbelievably.
That's awesome.
My mom or my dad never once said to me, get a backup plan.
Yeah.
They never did. And, you know, there have been years where I have cursed that parenting advice, you know, and I'm like, oh, well, if you would have just told me to, you know, but man, I can't begin to tell you how surprising that it was. Now, I will say the only time that my dad chose something else over like something I was involved in, I had written a musical. I wrote a rock opera version of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood when I was in college. Okay. And I wrote it with my friend Chris Todd. You know Chris Todd?
Yeah.
And it was one night only. And I was telling my dad about it. I was like, oh man, we got a space at the college and we're going to do this reading of this new rock opera. And he was like, yeah, son, I can't go. I got tickets to the Rolling Stones. That's totally fair. That is totally fair.
That's, come on, brother.
That was the only time. And even, you know, as conservative and kind of cantankerous as my old man could have been and pretty closed-minded, he never gave me any static about it.
Well,
it was cool.
That's beautiful, because that's, you know, as we talk about sharing these journeys with our young audiences, I hear a lot of kids who, you know, didn't get much love and support in that area, and it was like, please find anything else in the world to do. And our artists have been a mixed bag. There's some people whose parents were like, you got to be kidding me, and some who were like, nah, they gave me everything I needed. But that's an important part of where that journey comes from and how you get permission to go on it. But you've got this introduction. Your parents are supportive. As a result of that, you start early creating your own stuff. I mean, Spotlight Youth Theater. Yeah. You're creating eventually the Chocolate Factory. Mm-hmm. That's all you making your own stuff.
Well, yeah, it was me and it was a few other folks, Michael Todd, Chris Todd's brother. Right. We had been friends for a really long time, since we were kids, probably 12 or 13. And me and Michael and a bunch of the, you know, ne'er-do-wells from that time, we all got together and we just decided to start making our own stuff. And that was Spotlight Youth Theater. We rented out Jewel Box. Mm-hmm. We did a couple of shows. We did Snoopy the musical. Okay. And but then we started just like writing our own weird shows, and it was kind of cool. Like there was a kind of cool thing happening in the early 2000s around Norman and Oklahoma City with theater, because these young stinkers were kind of putting on these guerrilla shows, right? You know, and we just decided to do it our own way. And we weren't doing like just rock shows. We weren't doing just young shows. We did working. We really were really interested in exploring at that time musical theater, right? In a really serious way for our age. You know, we put together, I think our first show when we were still in high school, we hadn't graduated. Our first show was like a Sondheim review. And you just had a bunch of 15 and 16 and 17-year-olds doing a night of Sondheim, you know, and 25, 30 years ago, that was pretty crazy, I guess.
That's
Maybe
pretty crazy
not
today.
Now. Well,
That's pretty crazy right now. Like, That's not an easy thing to pull off. It's, first of all, it's incredibly difficult.
And no, it probably wasn't very good, but we loved it so much.
Right.
And it was really cool for us, but for however long that was, those 2 or 3 years, to just turn out, just work, show, get our hands dirty, like get just messy. And I fell in love with that process during that time. You know, I love to make a mess on stage, and that's where I learned to do it.
Yeah. I think that's fascinating because it's such a different story than I've heard in any of these conversations. In fact, in my own conversation, I hit high school and figured out there was a place for me to do theater at all. I had never even conceived of making any. I was just like, hey, somewhere I'm going to find a space and somebody's going to let me be the, you know, spear carrier number 2 or whatever it is. And then you figure out, oh, there's more, and there's more roles, and there's more shows. And you guys are here, you are high school kids, and you're like, we're going to make it.
Yeah. Just going to make them. We paid rights, and like, you know, we did it, I think.
Who's producing this?
We sold ads for the programs. We got sponsors. We went out and just got, kids that were in the shows with us. They had some parents put in money. There wasn't a lot of money involved, but, I don't think we made any money, of course, but man, we sure did that cool version of Hair at Stage Center,
Right. That's, talk about making your own way, ladies and gentlemen. Hear it and do it. Just get after it and go to town. So you're this high school kid, you're producing this stuff already. You're literally a high school theater producer.
I guess in a way, yeah. There was a group of us that really thought that's what we were doing.
Yeah. And so you're on the next part of that journey, high school. You get to walk across the stage. You got to go somewhere. I'm assuming it's like, I don't know what your house was like, but at my house it was the Army or college. Pick a thing. So you decide up on the University of Central Oklahoma, you're gonna stay close to home.
Yeah. I got a scholarship. And went to college, but kept making shows with what turned into the Chocolate Factory.
Right.
As I was going to college. Yeah.
And
study musical theater.
Okay. And so you're in this coursework, which is a much more formal environment. And there, here are the rules, and here's how it's structured, and this is what it looks like, and this is what you'll look like. There's got to be 2 pulls, it feels like. That feels like there's one pull over here. Here's the system. You find a place in this system as it exists, and we'll give you all the tools we can share with you. And then over here, you're like, I'm already making theater.
Yeah.
What's that dichotomy?
I don't think I realized that dichotomy until I was about to drop out of school. Because when I was there, I really respected my professors because they had, it was the old guard. It was Carve Osterhaus, Kay Creed. It was Tamara Long, and they had done some stuff.
Yeah.
And I really was fascinated with Tamara and Carveth, and Kay was my voice teacher.
Right.
So I took a lot of what they were teaching me as like, wow, I am learning from some old school, real deal folks.
Right.
But I knew this isn't really what's going on right now.
Right.
It was musical theater, and I was learning where I came from, where I was learning all of that history, and I was doing the show. My first show in college was The Gondoliers.
Okay.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah.
And I got the lead in that as a freshman. I didn't know how to sing. I knew how to imitate people on cast recordings, but I did not know how to sing.
Right.
I still don't know how to sing. I probably just imitate people on cast recordings, but I love it and it's fun.
Right.
But so I was kind of thrown right in my freshman year, and I thought, well, this is really cool. But pretty quickly I was like, man, I don't know how much of this is going to apply to what I think I want to do. you
Right.
know? And so I stayed and I learned until it was time for me to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because I mean, you're in college. You're a college kid, it'll be late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be the late 90s for you, and
95.
yeah. And I mean, you're coming up in the era where we're about to have the explosion of Jonathan Larson.
Mm-hmm.
We're about to see theater changed and turned on its ear, and it wasn't going to be about this thing that had been. It was moving on. It was the escalation and the evolution. Not only that, that's the piece that gives birth to this entire generation of new content creators. It gives birth to Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're feeling that buzz, you're feeling that pull. You've got these incredibly respected and artists that you value, and yet you're trying to straddle the road between the two of them. And then you make the decision to leave. That's an important piece of the story, because I want to be clear in this interview. I don't know that there's a path for any artist. There's no one clear path. And you and your people's going to college and finishing school, that's a conversation between you and your parents and your financial aid advisor. As artists, you take the path that you choose, and that's what puts you on this journey. How do you make that decision, particularly with the home life, the conservative ideas in one corner, not so conservative another? How do you do that? How do you make that decision? And what does it cost?
It's pretty easy, real easy decision, actually. I had continued writing, and of course, Jonathan Larson's impact in 1995, 96 was massive. And I knew, I was like, okay, cool. The rock musical is back. It's not just 1972 Jesus Christ Superstar, and that's really all you get.
Right.
Like, it's back, and it's better than it ever was. And so that was, I was like, okay, well, I got to write something like that, because I don't know that I'll ever be in that. I'm going to try, but I want to be in something like that. And my little teenage brain was like, let's write the next one. Mm-hmm. And so me and a couple of my friends submitted some songs to the BMI Music Theater Writers Workshop in New York. Mm-hmm. And we got accepted. And it was super easy for all of us. I had 1 year of college left, 2 semesters. But I was like, I gotta do this thing.
Yeah.
And so we went to go do that thing. And, it was, I don't regret it, because it was like, I was like, we submitted, they liked us, come to New York. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. And I was 21. Right. It was time. Wow. Yeah, it was a real easy decision. My parents, again, didn't give me any grief for dropping out of school, or if they did, it wasn't bad enough for me to remember. Right. You know, I think my family, my mom and my dad, were always my biggest fans. I mean, they really, it was really interesting, and because, again, you know, no previous experience or real tolerance for theater, but they didn't ever say, you're going to regret this. They knew that, you know, you got to have something to get into this important sounding thing that you auditioned for in New York City. And so they were like, go do it. I think that's extraordinary. Yeah. That they were saying, hey, it gets you out of bed in the morning. Yeah. That, you know, find all the 9-to-5s you want, but if it is not something that just makes you go, gotta go to work. Yeah. Then wow. So you're off and running. Yeah. You're doing what BMI Theater Workshop. You're in New York. You're working with friends of yours that you've developed this relationship with from your youth. Again,
it's another check in the box that says I'm on the right path.
Right?
Right? Crap. That comes to an end. I mean, it's not a long-term thing. It's got a duration. You finish it, you get back in Oklahoma. Now you're going to reinvent yourself again. Like you worked on the music writing stuff. Now why not do some comedy festivals? Just
some comedy, sure.
Yeah.
That's easy, right? Everyone can do that.
What's that thought process?
Again, there's not a lot of thought that I've discovered goes into my life, and that might bring us to why I'm in a room with a bunch of plastic boxes, but there you have it. So when I was in college, I became friends pretty right off the bat with a group of really funny guys. And I thought at first they were punking me. Because when I went to college, I was very small. I looked like I was about 12 years old. It was kind of a novelty, you know. And so I thought, oh man, they're just screwing with me. I was really insecure, you know, but they were not. They were like, they liked me and they wanted me to participate in one of their shows. And so they had this comedy show and they asked me to just read some poems that I'd written in between. And I guess it went well. And we did some shows in college when I was in UCO, and it was fun. We did some around the Bricktown Brewery, but I thought, well, that was fun. I got this thing. And then when I came back, One Hit Wonder was still going and things were still happening. And they were like, hey, we're going to go down to Austin and perform at this big international comedy festival. Do you want to come with us? And so I rejoined and we went down to Austin and we did our shows and then we went somewhere else.
I mean, yeah, that you're just literally the wind is taking you. You're finding a project that you love, that you're passionate about. You're doing it all the while. You're building this tool set, the skill set. You've got a voice in writing because you guys go from doing just kind of off the cuff shows at the Bricktown Brewery. You're performing in Austin. You're performing in Kansas City, in addition to Oklahoma, or Kansas, in addition to Oklahoma. You eventually take this thing and get it in front of some producers. People are seeing it. People with ability to make things happen for you. And you're just cataloging. Are you aware that you're cataloging this stuff? Are you just kind of grooving?
Just grooving. Just being young, getting drunk, making comedy, like just having a ball, not thinking. I mean, of course we were all thinking, all right, man, this could be it. This could be it. But we were just, I don't think I was taking inventory of everything that was. I don't think I've taken inventory of this until you started talking to me about all of this stuff, honestly, to tell you the truth. I never thought about this. Oh man, because I have done some stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's pretty extraordinary, man. I mean, it's I don't know if it's a mix of luck or, obviously you're very talented, but there is the country full of talented people and the world full of talented people, but you're hitting the right people. They say luck is when opportunity meets preparation, and you're building up these tools while you're doing your writing workshop. You're building up these tools while you're working with Tamara Long, while you're working with Kay Creed, while you're working with Carve Out the House. You're building up tools working at Jewel Box and putting on shows with the Spotlight Youth and with Chocolate Factory in the early days. So I mean, you're building this stuff up. You're creating this stuff, but that puts you in front of Terry Sweeney and Lanier Laney.
Yeah,
these guys are producers for Mad TV. Both of them got careers on their own. SNL. They've worked in various ventures that have allowed comedians and writers to grow and flourish. What's that like? Are you freaking out? What's happening?
It was cool to me because I remembered Terry Sweeney from the one season of SNL that he was on where he played Nancy Reagan. And he was the first openly gay character on SNL. And I remember his Nancy Reagan would do the talk show circuit, and it was really funny. But I was kind of starstruck by Terry Sweeney. I don't think any of the other guys really quite knew who he was. But his partner Lanier Laney was more of he was a head writer on SNL during that season. And we were performing in Austin, and they came up to us after the show, and they loved us and they wanted to talk to us. They were talking to us about getting us out to LA. That night at the show is when we made the plans to go out to LA and kind of be under their eye. And we moved out there. They bought us groceries. They were kind of like our parents, sort of, in a way, for a while there. And that was pretty cool. You know, they got us involved with the HBO workspace, where we did, like, I don't know, we did something like every month or every other month we would do a new show there, or work on the old show, kind of tweak it and invite more people. And so Terry Sweeney and Lanier Laney were really, really cool and helpful in bringing us out there and getting all of those connections.
Yeah. And it also takes you to a place where you're no longer just, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're no longer just entertaining each other. Now you've got people who are saying, this needs to be better. This isn't good enough, or try this differently. How is that changing you as an artist at this point?
At this point, it was kind of our first exposure to, like, oh, we love your creativity and we love your style and all of that, and we don't want to change anything. And it started to get weird when our agents started kind of dictating what our shows would be. Right. Our shows were very stream of consciousness. They would blend in. It would not, at the end of the show, it wouldn't seem like you watched 20 sketches. You know, you watched one thing that somehow went into another thing, and then somehow was a movie, and then somehow came, so our shows were not just kind of like throw these things at the wall. They had an arc. And I think a lot of people, I guess, just didn't understand that. And so we had some agents that tried to kind of tool with our stuff, and that didn't go so well, because we had to let them go. Because this was like, we were so young and so sure of ourselves, and we knew that this show that they were trying to make us do was not going to work. It wasn't funny, right? You know, and so we decided to do it on our own, right? And we did.
Yeah, and it, you know,
I guess it's, I mean, we said we got invited to the Aspen Comedy Arts Festival, and we were represented by CAA, and they wanted to see our show and had this show, and they came over to our house. We lived in a big house together, 7 of us in this huge house. And they came over and we sat them down, and we were like, we're not going to do your show. And they were like, okay, well, you're not going to Aspen. And we were like, well, we are. We've already been accepted. We're just not going to go to Aspen with you guys. And so we went to Aspen unrepresented. And, it was like, are you the guys that fired CAA? Yeah, I guess we are. Whoops. But we got a radio show out of the deal. We got a national radio show out of that gig.
Out of that, yeah. Well, and I mean, here's the deal: you don't always know what's going to work, but you knew that what they were saying wasn't going to work for you.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair, and that's, again, creating your own path, building your own direction. This isn't about right or wrong, and hindsight is not 2020 because that's terrible. But it gives you all kinds of room to say, well, what we should have done is. Problem with that is you can't get to where you are shouldn't have done a thing.
Right.
Shouldn't have done? I don't know what that was.
Shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Guys, be right back. I got to should have done the thing.
You guys you do this comedy festival in Aspen, and it's important to note that becomes just the comedy festival which moves eventually to Las Vegas, which eventually houses, I mean, it's a multi-stage, multi-venue event now. It's had Ellen DeGeneres on the stage, Tracy Morgan, Jerry Seinfeld, Dane Cook, and One Hit Wonder makes its kind of connection in that space. You get a sketch comedy show, 2-hour weekly radio sketch comedy show out of this thing. You're again navigating the world that is no longer just, hey, this is what we think is funny. We've had a bunch of beers. Let's entertain ourselves and then repeat that show in front of an audience. Right. Now you're having to deal with other people. There are people who are like, there are demands on you. There are time frames. There are, there's a grind in all of the fun that you're having.
Yeah. Yeah.
Group of friends, young as you are,
yeah,
that's got to take a toll.
Of course it did. It did. I mean, we're not together, and we don't have an HBO series. We are great friends, and during the pandemic, we've connected. We all talk a couple of times a week. We've been getting together and talking about old shows and stuff. So we're all really close. I think at that time I was the youngest. Me and Derek were the youngest. We were 21, 22, and I think the oldest was 27 or 28. So we had a lot of piss and vinegar, but we wanted to stay a troupe for sure, because I don't think, and it may be different now, but none of us would have chosen to go to LA as actors. Or if we did, that wasn't like a priority. Then we went as a group. And as you know, especially if we live together, the dynamic starts to happen where it's 2 hours a week. You got to make something. And there were 7 of us, and we were all putting out material. But it did take a toll. And auditions started happening for certain members of the troupe, but not others. And so that started to really suck for both parties. Right. The people that were asked to go to these auditions and the people that were not. And we thought, man, this is looking a lot like they're trying to farm a few people. And it just kind of stopped, Mm-hmm. We sort of just went our own ways. We have so much material though. I mean, that's the thing. David, one of the guys in the troupe, has been archiving all of our material, and we'll get like pictures. There was a picture he sent last week of us and Robin Williams and Billy Connolly backstage at Aspen. And it was just like, right. Man,
right.
How cool. So there's gonna be a coffee table book or a documentary or something, because there's so much material of these super young guys being pretty clever and pretty funny, Right. That's what we did.
Awesome. And so figuratively, it's like, take me back to Tulsa. You gotta head back to Oklahoma City. You gotta kind of regroup and restart again and kind of figure out what the next reinvention is going to be. And you've got lots of stuff to keep you entertained. You love to play music by this time. You love to do a little, guitar playing, and whether you will acknowledge it or not, you sing in bands, and you're front man. And so you've got that skill set. You've been writing, you've learned to work as a writer. So now it's about bringing all that stuff together to suit you, to fit you back home. And you've got the fellowship students that are here.
Yeah.
Development of that.
Before a few of us moved back, I started talking with Nathan Seiler, mm-hmm. Who lives in New York now. He's a musician. He works all the time as a musician in New York, and it's so cool. But I had been a kind of a satellite friend of his during the Spotlight Chocolate Factory time. He lived in the party house where we did all of our writing.
Right.
And he, so we were friends and we kind of been in touch. And I was like, man, I think I want to start a band when I get back to Oklahoma. And he's like, great, I do too. And I've got a drummer. And so we'll get together. And as soon as I got back, we started the fellowship students and we started playing all the time. And then Chocolate Factory was still happening. And so we became like the house band for the Chocolate Factory. That's where I did my first Hedwig. And that's cool because that was sort of our first project. I was like, all right, we're going to be a band, but I want to do something a little different than what's happening. And so our shows, while they were still pretty rowdy, pretty drunk, pretty loose, they still had some kind of connecting element. Whether it was this show, we would reprise this song 3 or 4 times, or, you know, we would give away meats at different lunch meets I mean, it was just, we just did weird shit.
Right.
And tried to just heighten it a little bit, just make the rock show a little something extra. And then, and so my thought was, I want to bring a theatricality to my writing, which is going to happen. And Nathan and Jacob, the drummer, were all really, they'd started off in theater and they'd done theater in high school. So they were on board to do something a little more. And so the first thing we did was, I think, like beyond just playing in a gig was the Hedwig thing. And that seemed to work pretty well.
Man.
Yeah.
So let's I'm going to trace this back for a second because I think I'm seeing a connection. So you've got Muppets and you've got the Beatles. You've got Sgt. Pepper. You've got Yellow Brick Road. You've got that form of storytelling through music. You start pursuing it as a young producer of theater. You're going to build, you and your buddies are going to make a playhouse, essentially. And it expands beyond that because somebody's giving you money to help do it. So now you've got this theatrical producer element. You are training at the university level with old school artists from the stage. But at the same time, this revolution is happening where Tick, Tick, Boom and eventually Rent would come out of it. So there's this element that's bringing you all together. Now you're working on your writing. Now you're working on, you know, having to meet deadlines and collaboration. You're going out to LA, all bringing you back home to meet what I would have to assume is maybe one of your longest relationships of all time, you and Hedwig.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's the longest relationship I've ever had. I have never had a relationship with a girl that long before in my life.
As long as you've had it with this girl.
Yes.
And that's roughly 2010?
No. The first one was 2002.
Okay. So that first one you're doing, that's a minute.
Yeah.
And all the culmination of all of this stuff that you've kind of done, again, are you thinking it through? Have you figured it out that you're pouring all of these different parts of yourself into this to create what becomes Hedwig and eventually becomes, this is the guy that makes theater like this? Because nobody else is doing that around here,
right.
Really.
It happened a little earlier, and it's when I went to the Jane Street Theater to see the show for the first time when I lived in New York.
Okay.
I was a Rent nut, and I had no idea what Hedwig was about. All we had were the playbill with the black and white shot of her going like this, and I thought, oh man, I can't wait to see this hot chick rock musical. I don't know what this is. Right. We didn't really have the internet in any way that you could really, so I knew nothing. And I went in to this smoky, shitty hotel ballroom. And I was like, okay. The band came out. I was like, I like this. They don't give a shit. They're just
here.
There's this roadie walking around with a Rent shirt. That's hilarious. And then she comes out. And the first song, I was like, oh my God. I have never heard a rock song in theater before, I guess, because that's what that is.
Right.
And when the show started, literally, because I was like, holy shit, this is comedy. It seems like it's just happening.
Right. Stream of consciousness.
Outrageous.
Yeah.
The music is insane. It is commenting. It is the anti-musical in a way, or for me at that time, you know, I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. Because I was like, what is this? And you know, we've talked about this a million times. What is this? Is this, I could sell it to anybody. You want to come see a comedy show? You want to see a drag show? You want to see a rock concert? You want to see a play?
Mm-hmm.
It's everything that's important to me, in one thing. And I knew, seeing it that night, I was like, man, I don't look like that, but I'm gonna play that part someday. I have to know what that feels like, because that up until then it was like Mark. I want to play Mark. I'm Mark Cohen. I mean, like, I had the glasses, I had the hair. It was annoying, and I would have hated myself if I would have, because that dude was really into Rent. But when I saw that, I was like, oh man, the rock musical can be something that you can't even describe. Right. And that's what I want to do. And then, you know, so I started trying to write that stuff, you know, and then Passing Strange comes along, and I see that and I go, everyone just has to stop writing things now.
So I can catch up.
That's the best.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not done yet. It's not done yet. Because you're, I think this is I don't know that I've ever seen it all come clear in a way like this before in one of these interviews. You're doing your first Hedwig. You're figuring out, okay, it's all going back to start. It's bringing every element that I've put together thus far and putting it into one thing. It's stream of consciousness. It's the audience has to be willing to follow it. They have to trust that it's going to go somewhere. And sometimes it's not even clear. So you've got all this happening. Then you start creating opportunities for yourself as an actor. You're back here in the space. So I want to ask you about this and tell me how it comes to be, because you start finding your way towards Opus, your version of that. So tell me about Rainbow Around the Sun. How do you get there?
Well, yeah. Okay. So that one was a concept album that I wrote and recorded with the fellowship students. And there were a few songs that I had written that we played with the fellowship students in our sets. But again, all of my songs are pretty theatrical. They're always sung. I kind of come from the Randy Newman way of writing things, where it's a character is singing. I don't think I've ever sang a song that was really about me. You know, it could be a character of me or things I don't want to acknowledge about the real me, but everything comes from a character. So I thought, well, I want to put something together. My father just passed away from a long bout with cancer, and I was feeling pretty low, and I didn't know what to do. I was a mess. And so I said, I'm going to make a record about this mess that I'm in. And that mess was ugly, and it was sad, and it was mean, and it was basically putting all of these things that were pulling me down and putting them into a record with really glossy, shiny pop melodies. That was the thing. And I wanted it to be a concept album for people who hate concept albums. You can listen to just one song. You don't have to listen to the whole thing. But each one of them is going to be poppy and pretty shiny. The so I started writing more songs to tie all of them together, and pretty quickly I had an album. And after my dad died, a couple months, 3 or 4 months after that, I was ready to record. And so I went in with the fellowship students, and a lot of the songs we did in a way that you always hear about people doing, where you go into the studio, you don't have a song, but you make one in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
We did that a couple of times, which is cool. Where I would just kind of have like, well, I've got this riff and this idea,
Mm-hmm.
and then we would all build on it. So it was a cool few weeks of really like putting together this album. And I think the record turned out pretty good. And pretty quickly after we made the album, some friends of mine who I'd done some short films with said, hey, you want us to make some videos of the songs? And I thought, well yeah, of course. And at that time, Sean Lennon came out with a record that I thought was really interesting. It was I think it was kind of like the first sort of idea of like, not the first, but Beyonce does these visual albums.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Lennon did one back in 2003, 2004, I think. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting way to do that. It's not necessarily a story, but it's, a few minutes of each song. And when they heard it, they said, well, I think that this is a film instead of a bunch of songs. And so they came up with a screenplay, and we raised money, got a producer,
Mm-hmm.
and hooked up through Dead Center, sort of, some of those people. And we made the movie in Guthrie. And it went to some film festivals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's South by Southwest is some
South
stuff.
by Southwest was where it premiered. Yeah.
Got some stuff happening there. I mean,
yeah.
Again, just gonna make it. Just gonna make it.
Just gotta make it. That's it. But that's the hardest thing, though, because is just doing it. That's the hardest thing, and I struggle with that today. I have 10 ideas a day, and I'm lazy. Or, but this. There's all these like excuses, and I think at least for me when I was younger, I didn't give a shit about the excuses, Not that I do now, but I'm in my 40s. It's not so easy to like really just keep churning stuff out like I did when I was 20, you know.
Right.
Also, just because life. Like,
yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Then there's a virus.
There's a virus out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's that's one of the first ways I had seen you play Hedwig. I knew you from the community, but one of the first ways I came into contact with you was through Rainbow Around the Sun, and I responded to it very much the way I respond to a lot of things that I eventually turn into passions of mine. I don't know what this is, and I'm not 100% sure that I'm supposed to know what this is, but I know that it moves me.
Right.
It gets under my skin. It stays with me when I'm in bed, and you're kind of going, I wonder if that song is, I need to hear it under this context and see if that, and all of this in a way, and we've never had a chance to really talk about this. All of this in a way is a coping mechanism for where is my dad? Yeah. I mean, yeah.
All right, Jerome. All right. You're getting close.
No, you're
getting close.
Because we've that dad relationship, that thing, we've talked about that part, and I talk about mine is a very different from yours. But that where is he is, I don't know, because there's a connection, and we know that he's here on the list, and I'm the right thing below that. I'm supposed to take what he gives me and go and build from that. So you're finding a way to put that out in the world, even in what you're calling a jumbly mess, because you made art out of that jumbly mess.
Yeah. I mean that, well, pain, ego, art, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and, the truth of the matter is I was a mess for 10 years after that. I'm still a mess, but I was really, the whole record, not the whole record, but there's a very pervasive theme about how much I drink in that record. And it was very clear to me at that time, I have got to stop this. This is not helping my situation.
Right.
Wasn't, obviously, but it didn't really stop until 5 years ago. I had a couple of attempts to get my shit together, but it was tough. And so it's one of those things. I go back and listen to it and I'm like, man, that kid is yelling for some help.
Yeah.
And of course I was, and I knew that when I was putting it out there, but I also knew that a lot of my favorite songs are pretty sad and come from some pretty sad places. And the reason why they work is because they're real.
Mm-hmm.
And I was interested in creating something that sounded almost Muppety, but when you really got to it, it's pretty real. I mean, it's a pretty all over the place kind of record, and I wanted it to sound fairly joyful. And the name Rainbow Around the Sun sounds like a really great image, but what I was thinking when I made it is that I'm just burning hot with all of this disappointment and sadness, and the rest of the world is just doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it definitely 100% was, I miss my dad. I don't know, I wasn't ready for this. I don't feel like I'm equipped to be the guy he wants me to be.
Right.
I don't even know if I'm there yet, but I'm getting there. I'm better than I was, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a record with a lot of I go back and I look at that 27-year-old that wrote it, or and I go, dude, you knew there were some problems here. Right. And and it's like stew, like work your wound.
Yeah.
That's what the whole thing was.
Yep.
And to that end, because it was so personal and so vulnerable,
yeah.
I have removed myself from it because it hurts when people say something shitty about it.
Right.
And so I wrote this King Guitarther and the Drugs thing after that. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make this silly, and I don't care if people don't like it, because it's completely ridiculous.
Won't hurt me.
Right. But I think I made a bit of a mistake. My first opus out, like just going, here's my guts, and then not being mentally prepared enough to go, well, what if people don't like your guts and they say bad things about your guts on the internet? Was just something I've had to learn to get over.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I know that it's how I came into contact with you as an artist, and I'd always been a fan of your work, and I'd always appreciated what you were doing. But it was also how I knew when we were early talking about the possibility of building this Passing Strange thing together.
Right.
And Timothy Stewart and I are sitting around talking about, well, how do we do that? And being able to play with race in the play. And my feeling about you had always been, anybody who was able to do this record and essentially lay down on the tracks in front of everybody has to be a real deal artist and won't do anything but elevate what we're doing on that stage. And it was true. Not only had you brought the piece to us in a roundabout way, you, Chris Castleberry to me, yeah. I'm sitting at you guys' home watching this thing. You pull in at the middle of the show and go, oh, we're watching Strange? Scoot over. Like,
yeah.
But you were a physical embodiment of youth, of that character. And I'm watching you in real time because you can only see it at a distance. That's the beautiful thing about Passing Strange. I can see it in you, but I can't necessarily see it in myself at the same time. But I could watch you turn into the older version of Stu and go, don't you see the parallels? You're wearing the same shirt. Like,
right.
And you can say to me, but don't you get where you're the same guy? And you did, and you gotta go, oh yeah, no, I didn't see that before. So no, man, that's wild. That's wild. So I have to ask, you've done all this stuff. In the meanwhile, you're working with Lyric, you're continuing to do a My Fair Lady every once in a while, and I use that as an example, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But
ragtime.
A ragtime for sure.
Yeah.
You're showing up in some Hello Dollies here and there.
Yeah.
But as they get Michael Barron in place and he starts to twiddle with the knobs and says, I'm gonna play with this over here, you're also getting a chance to do a lot of other things as an actor, because you're not just a musical theater guy, you're also messing around with I Am My Own Wife.
Right.
And you're playing with Frost Nixon, and you're slumming in 8, and you're doing a little Normal Harding. You've shaped the career you want, but it's infused with all of this other stuff.
Yeah.
And I want you to speak a little bit to that, because I think it's so easy to think of you as, to actually pigeonhole you in the other direction. Oh, he's a more of a rock theater guy. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I think I am more of a rock theater guy. I mean, that's where I put myself, but I'm a theater guy, you know? I was a theater guy before I was a rock theater guy, and I have never scoffed at a chance to be in Fiddler on the Roof or Hello Dolly. They're classics for a reason. They always work. They're perfect. And it's hard to get a perfect show. So when those old things come along, I really respect where the art form came from. And I have a great fondness for some of those things. And to me, it's just a break from doing the experimental, weird kind of whatever kind of chaos. And it kind of brings me back to when I was getting my first start, you know, when I was doing mostly musicals, but I've always been interested in acting. And I don't know how Michael Barron knew that. I don't know, because I don't feel like I ever really got a chance to show him that I could act. I've showed him that I could be in the Rocky Horror Show and this. But when he called me and said, hey, do you want to do I Am My Own Wife? I was first so honored that the artistic director of a theater would call me to do a one-man show. Whenever I get a call from an artistic director and they offer me a show, I'm going to say yes, because that shit doesn't happen.
Right.
You know, we still have to audition, you know, but sometimes we don't. And when we don't, it's awesome, because that means, okay, this cat that I really respect has seen some of my work and has gone, yep, let's do this. That's the coolest thing to me. So when stuff like that happens, you just think, okay, cool. I've done the work and people know, and that's awesome.
Right.
Let's do it. And, you know, I Am My Own Wife was so scary. So scary. Because with Hedwig, I got a band on stage. I got somebody that I can pick on if I forget something, you know. And with I Am My Own Wife, there's a lot of facts and a whole lot of German and a whole lot of other languages. Also a lot of facts. Did I mention the fact? So many facts. But to do that for me, I felt like I climbed Mount Everest or something. I never got comfortable doing it. And I don't know that I would ever do it again because it was really hard.
Sure.
But I got to do it twice.
Right.
You know, and then Frost Nixon, that was just an absolute no-brainer for me. When he called, I was like, let's start now. And, you know, we had 18 months to prepare, but it didn't, honestly, when these things happen, Jerome, I don't think that I'm going to a different thing. You know, it's just like, this is the work. I mean, I wouldn't have been like in February or March, I would not have thought the way I'm going to make my money in 2020 is being a kids TV show host with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
No idea. But I do it, and I get to write with my partner. We get to write songs together. Like, that's amazing. And I love it so much. But that's the thing. You don't know what's going to be the thing until it's the thing. You know, right now my thing is doing a kids show with my girlfriend. Awesome. But, you know.
They tell me art heals, man.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, they tell me that. And I mean, I wanted to make sure that we talked a little bit about that because I think of you as a theater artist. I think of you as an artist. All of that stuff that you do are just colors of the art.
Yeah.
But I don't think you don't bring your acting skills to bear when you're doing a rock show. I think you do. I think you have to. I think that's
Absolutely.
The only way you're able to make that work.
Completely. And the whole reason I was able to be in a band, the whole like justification is I was like, I'm an actor. I'm going to act like I'm in a band.
Yeah.
And I was. And it was the most natural. Like, I didn't have to fake it. I just, you know, I was like, oh, okay, that's what this is. If I had a script, I would do what it says. I have a guitar and a microphone. I've seen some concerts. I understand.
Yeah.
You know, but I think I approach everything as an actor because that's where I started.
Right.
I think that's really true. I just act like I'm a teacher, act like I'm a director, act like I'm this or that.
You know, it's telling because when I first heard the Clubhouse theme that you put together, you sent a copy of the song, and I was like, this feels like Matt. It doesn't feel like somebody doing a kid show and like, here, make this kid show this way, XYZ. And it made me think when I was doing this interview, it all feels like him. That's what's been the through line. That's why CAA, as awesome as that is to put on your resume, I was once represented by CAA, they got to go because you don't want it to feel like us. You don't want it to feel like me. You want to make me into you. And there's no money in that. There's no value in that. There's no joy in that. That's what's really interesting to me. And so I ask you this because you can't have thought to yourself making plays at Spotlight, I'm going to teach this eventually.
Yeah. No.
You know, nobody's like, hey, tattoo guy, come here and teach some kids.
Right. Yeah.
How do you find yourself on that path?
Our good friend Stephen Hilton was the director of education at the Thelma Gaylord Academy, and 12 years ago or 11 years ago, he was like, hey, you want to teach a School of Rock class at Lyric? And again, when somebody offers me a job, I'm pretty much I'm not gonna ask a lot of questions because I like to make money doing what I do. And so I said, yeah. And then I thought, shit, I don't know what that means. And so I was like, all right, I don't want to do like a Jack Black School of Rock. If we're going to do it, it's got to be whatever the kids want it to be. Because their ideas are insane. And that's what we need. I don't want a governor on the idea. I want everything. And so for the first few years, I was like, guys, honestly, there's no rules in this class. You know, don't be a jerk. Don't, you know, be a jerk.
Yeah.
But the only rule that I have is just be louder. Just be louder. I don't care what you do. And so that first semester, I was like, okay, we put together like some cover songs, and then I sort of tied it together with a little story, and that seemed to work okay. And then the next year did another one like that. And then the third year I was like, all right, I wrote this kids rock opera and we did it, and it was awesome. And I was like, oh, cool. And that was the first time that we started with nothing and made this thing. And it was like the old Spotlight Youth Theater days. It was like the Chocolate Factory days. It was just messy and out of control. And the kids were never more alive. And neither was I. And it's been the coolest gig ever, because the kids that are in the class want to be there.
Right.
I don't know. Here's the thing. I don't know if these kids, I don't want to say kids, young artists, I don't know what they were in high school. I don't know if they were the cool kids. I don't know if they were the dorks. I don't know what they were. But when they were all in that room, they were the coolest kids ever. And I think it gave them a space before they go off into the world to not hear the word no. And that's why I decided to call it the Rock Academy Experiment, because I was like, yeah, don't say no. Don't say no. Yeah. Like, does this idea work? Let's try it.
Let's see.
It didn't work. Do we know why it didn't work? Cool. And so but eventually what we decided, the formula that works for the class is to find an album and perform the album. And sometimes we've performed it as a play, like we did The Hazards of Love last year. And it's a pretty literary piece. And so we staged it in that kind of Hedwig Passing Strange way, where it was like, is this a show? But then we've also done, like OK Computer by Radiohead, where they performed in front of a big sheet of plastic and the audience couldn't see them except in silhouette. And then we had little webcams on their microphones. And so it was just like this weird, like audio visual assault. But that's what we found, is like taking a record and deciding, how do we put this in front of people? We're not the band. We're not the Beatles. We're not Pink Floyd. So let's tell it in our own way as a piece. And so we've done so many The Wall. If you go on YouTube, you can watch The Wall. That thing was, I don't know how we were allowed to do that, but we did, and it was killer.
Awesome. So with all of this that we've kind of uncovered or at least delve into today, what's your advice? What do you tell the little guy, little gal that's starting out that says, that's really what I want to make my own path, and they're stumbling on the doing it part, they're stumbling on the starting part? What do you say?
The only thing I can say is get over that and do it. Pull the Band-Aid off and do it. Every idea that you have is not going to be awesome, and it's going to hurt sometimes, but more often than not, by just doing it, you're going to have something, whether it's what you started, whether it's the idea that you started with or not. I think it's just having blind faith in your drive to do it, and kind of not, I never cared if we were going to make money, because I knew that would happen someday once somebody saw what we were doing. It wasn't about that. It was just, man, we gotta do working right now. Like, we gotta do this show. Like, we have to do 8 shows this summer. And we did. I think the advice is to just stop being so careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, you know what's right and wrong. Just go for it.
So this is coming. You got to know this is coming. So I say, let's just jump right into it. Matt Brown, what is your favorite word?
Fuck.
Okay.
I know it's everyone's favorite word, but it is. And you know all the reasons why it is.
Yeah. So good.
I say it so much, and I put it with words that shouldn't be put with it, and it's a problem, but I like that word a great deal.
Fair. What's your least favorite word?
Casserole.
All right.
I hate it.
Looking at our producer, Jared, he's just cracking up on the stuff. I'm telling tales out of school. What turns you on creatively, spiritually, emotionally?
What turns me on creatively, spiritually, emotionally? Real art turns me on. It's the only thing I look for,
Right.
My life is really pretty simple, and it's just in the pursuit of art. I can't think of anything that excites me. I don't get excited by cars. I don't get excited by sports. When I see or read or hear a really good piece of something, it is medicine.
Mm-hmm.
It does elevate me, I think. So a real cheesy, basic answer is going to be art until I can think of what I should have said here in about 20 minutes.
That's the right answer, man. That's a beautiful answer. What turns you off?
Politics.
Yeah, buddy.
I'm really turned off right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
I think politics, but then I think it's really just I'm going to say greed and apathy turn me off.
Okay. Yeah. Particularly greed and apathy as it relates to politics, I would imagine.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. What is your favorite curse word?
Okay.
Does that count as a separate question?
It does, because there's a different one.
Huh.
Oh, man, I can't say it. I can't say it because my mom's going to watch it.
Okay. All right.
And I've already said the F word.
Yes.
And the only time she ever heard me say the F word was when I was calling her from jail.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You can cut that part if you want.
Yeah, that's the whole ride, brother. We won't go into the details on this season's episode.
Mistakes.
You'll be back for season 2. Wow. Man, it paints a real specific picture if it's a word you can't say.
It's 2 words, and I'll tell you in private.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's bum bum bop.
Cool. I like the rhythm.
The last word's F. So, yeah.
I like the rhythm. What sound and noise do you love?
Laughter. I love laughter. I love to hear people laugh. I like to hear my girlfriend laugh. I've only spent the last 6 months with one person, because of this whole thing. And I have loved hearing her laugh so much. And I know that's super cheesy.
Not at all.
Man, it's a balm for me, because life's pretty scary. So I like laughter in general, but if I were to put a point on it, I'm really into Emily laughing right now.
That's the tits. Love it, man. What sound and noise do you hate?
Mm, uh, yeah, there's a lot. I don't know. Like something breaking, like things coming apart, or a loud smash. I don't like.
Really?
Also, I don't like the sound that casserole makes.
All right. Some casseroles are so good.
I know, but don't call it that.
Okay.
Call it a baked dish,
Okay.
or this thing I made. But don't put the C word in it.
Gotcha.
It just yeah.
Wow.
I know.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Oh, I would like to. I would like to work with special needs people. I would like to work with people with Down syndrome. I got to work a musical theater camp at UCO a few years ago, and I was like, I think if this theater thing doesn't work out, I think I want to work. I think I want to work with people in that way. I think some sort of special needs kind of friend would be something I would like. I don't even know if that's what you say, but I'm coming from a real spot here. But that thing only happened to me 5 or 6 years ago when I did that workshop. I would have not had any way to answer that question had that not have happened.
See. Which profession would you hate to be involved in?
Politics.
Yeah.
That seems pretty soul-sucking.
And finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Is that Matt with 2 T's? Yeah, gotcha. Whew.
Man,
something like that.
I dig that. I've had the good pleasure and good fortune to work with you on a couple of occasions, and every time I grow because you're just raw in your pursuit of that thing that turns you on, art. And getting to understand how you got there, and I would assume, having had this conversation, fearlessness eventually, maybe cluelessness early on, and youth that allowed you to just go, no, this is the way I'm going. I'll see where it leads me. That requires a level of bravery I can't even wrap my mind around. I couldn't have wrapped my mind around at that point in my life, but I'm grateful that I've had your inspiration at this later part, man. I thank you for your time and for spending the day with us.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. I feel like I owe you some money for the breakthroughs that I have discovered about myself. No, man, every single opportunity that I've had to perform at the Pollard or with you or with your producer over there has just been the thing that turns me on. It's been every time, and Emily and I were talking about this, we miss going up to Guthrie and taking that drive and walking into that church, and thank you for letting us worship there. And I can't wait till we get to do it again.
All right, you're getting close. Hey, watch out.
Hey.
Hey, I feel exactly the same way, brother. Thank you much.
Thank you. I'm Matthew Alvin Brown. I'm an artist, and I'm plugged in.